So you want to hear a funny story? About a year and a half ago, my BMW started making noises like it had an exhaust leak. And I couldn't tell exactly where it was coming from, but it sounded like it was around the headers, the exhaust headers, which are aftermarket headers with no cats that I installed about 12 or 15 years ago. I don't remember exactly, but they haven't had any problems ever since I installed them. I figured maybe a bolt had come loose or one of the gaskets blew out somehow, but we were getting ready to move and there was a lot going on in our lives and I just didn't really have time to mess with it too much. I figured it was just an exhaust leak. The car drives fine. It can wait. Well, like I said, it's been a year and a half and about 4,000 miles, and I finally had time to look at this thing yesterday. Guess what I found? I put the car up on jack stands and got underneath with a couple of lights and had a really good look at the exhaust, but I didn't find anything. I looked at every bolt, every connection. I looked for rust, holes that might have worn through from friction. Even laying underneath the car with the engine running, I still couldn't tell where the sound was coming from. But with 287,000 miles on this car, everything actually still looks really good. So I got out from underneath the car and with the engine still running, I started looking around the top side again. I set my hand on one of these plastic covers that goes over the spark plugs, and the sound got a little bit quieter. I thought, that's kind of weird. What could be making noises under there? So I pulled off those covers, which meant I had to pull out the cabin air filter and the housing for it, which is pretty easy, and I've done it a whole bunch of times, so it goes really fast. And what I saw underneath was not a whole lot. I saw all the coil packs just where they were supposed to be, but the exhaust leak sound did seem to be getting a little bit louder. It seemed like it was coming from the back of the engine, like the number 6 cylinder. So I pulled out the coil pack and, well, here's what I found. Okay, I think the sound's coming from cylinder 6, so let's have a look. Here's the coil pack. That is covered in carbon. That tube is covered in carbon. I bet the spark plug's loose. Yeah, very loose. All right, so we did have an exhaust leak, but not in a place where I'd expect. Spark plug looks... Oh no. That used to have 4 prongs on it. There's only 2 prongs left. The other 2 must have gone into the cylinder. Oh shoot. I can't see anything down in that hole, and my magnet on a stick was just barely too big to fit down in that spark plug hole. Nothing. But the car's been making that noise for so long. We even drove it from Oregon to Arkansas like that. So I'm hoping those prongs are long gone. Hopefully they shot out with the exhaust. Hopefully they fit through the exhaust valves. I don't really know what the clearance would be on that, but I think I have a smaller magnet somewhere that I'm going to try to find, and we'll see if I can get something out of there. In the meantime, I went to AutoZone today and got a new set of spark plugs. They are NGK Iridium plugs, and they were about $11.49 a piece. They were exactly $11.49 a piece, actually, plus tax. So it came out to about $75 for 6 spark plugs. I could have gotten them online for about $30 cheaper from FCP Euro, Amazon, Walmart.com, and probably some other places too, but I wouldn't have gotten them for about 5 days because of shipping, and I needed them right away. So here we are. Now, as a disclaimer, I'm not saying that I did any scientific sort of test on the Bosch plugs to prove that they're inferior compared to NGK plugs, but I saw what happened with the ones that were in my car, and I never want that to happen again, so I'm never buying these again. That's all I can say about it. It's just anecdotal, my experience. Don't sue me, just relax. But I've owned this car for 17 years now, and in that time I've read a lot of forum posts about people recommending NGK spark plugs. A lot of people trash talk the Bosch plugs. I never really knew why. I never heard of this happening before, but I'm starting to think there's something to it. I mean, look at this, in 4K. Can you see this? That short video wasn't in 4K, but look at that. They broke off. These plugs only have 31,000 miles on them. 31,000 miles. I installed them 5 years ago, but only 31,000 miles. And by the way, that wasn't the only one that was loose. The number 1 plug was a little loose too, but we're not seeing any catastrophic damage from the number 1 plug. Just for a comparison, let's take a look at one of the new plugs made by NGK compared to one of the old plugs that didn't fall apart. You always want to make sure that they're the same length. You don't want to buy the wrong spark plugs at the auto parts store from some doofus that doesn't know the difference, and then have this make contact with your piston and destroy your engine. Well, it looks like I don't have a smaller magnet on a stick, and I don't have a borescope, so I think I'm just gonna put the new plugs in and send it. I decided that I really want to get a borescope and take a better look inside that cylinder, so I found this one on Amazon. It's not too expensive, and it looks like it should do everything we need to take a good look all around the cylinder wall, and hopefully up at the valves too. I also borrowed a smaller magnet on a stick from a neighbor, so if there is anything in there, hopefully I can get it out. Before you install your new spark plugs, just take a look at the gaps on these. If you have a good gap tool, you can measure these to make sure it's right for your car based on the specifications in the service manual. Like I said before, you want to compare these to the old spark plugs to make sure they're the exact same size. And I also think it's a good idea to just visually compare the gap here and make sure it looks the same on all 6 plugs, because even though it says on the box not to change the gap, probably because the electrode is so delicate, you never know if somebody might have dropped these or if they were damaged in shipping and the electrode got bent somehow, which would probably make your car run poorly. So if you find a bad spark plug, just take it back to the store and get a new one. I read online that you don't need to use anti-seize on spark plugs anymore because modern spark plugs have a coating on the threads, and it's basically an anti-seize coating. So you don't need to add that stuff. You also, if you were using anti-seize, you need to make sure you're using a torque spec that is appropriate, because it's going to be different whether or not you are using anti-seize. The anti-seize acts as a lubricant on the threads, and if you torqued it to the same amount, it would go in further with the anti-seize on the threads. This is a magnetic spark plug socket that I got at AutoZone, I'm pretty sure, and it's really nice to have. I had one of the old ones with the rubber gasket inside, and it was so old that the rubber wouldn't hold the spark plugs in place anymore. But this is great. It's just strong enough, it's not gonna fall out. I like that a lot. Link in the description. See here on the box, it doesn't give you a torque spec. It tells you another half turn to 2/3 of a turn after the spark plug bottoms out, basically. So it takes that much to squish the crush washer or bushing or whatever you call it on there. And I remember that the Bosch plugs kind of said the same thing. And I think, and my theory is, that's why the plugs started coming loose, because I didn't use the torque spec. I used the stupid number on the box. And I feel like it said 1/4 of a turn, but don't quote me on that because I don't remember. That was 5 years ago. Okay, so since recording this, I realized that I actually filmed installing the last set of spark plugs for one of my first videos. And I did torque them to spec, but I used anti-seize because it was before I realized that you weren't supposed to anymore. And so I used the lower torque spec. So my new theory is that the spark plugs probably came loose because I used anti-seize, I guess, even though that shouldn't have happened. And I'm gonna assume that the prongs broke off of the spark plug because it came loose and it could shake up and down a little bit. I mean, it would be a really small amount, but it would be very violent and over a very long period of time. But I still don't think that should have happened either, but I guess we'll never really know for sure. So anyway, this time we're gonna use the torque spec, which is, here's my cheat sheet. I got this online years ago. They don't sell them anymore. But here, spark plugs, ungreased, 22.1 foot-pounds. That's for this car. With anti-seize, it would be less, 18.4 foot-pounds. But like I said, we're not dealing with anti-seize anymore. I always use a torque wrench because this engine has an aluminum head and you don't want to strip out the spark plug threads. I don't know how much this matters, but I numbered all of my ignition coils 1 and 2 through 6 to match up these cylinder numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 so that they always go back in the same place. I think I probably read on a forum years ago that that was a good idea. I hate when people tell you to do something, but they don't tell you why. Because it's so much easier to remember when they tell you why you're doing something. I don't like electronic stuff. I mean, I don't understand electronic stuff very well, so I couldn't even fathom a guess as to why it's a good idea to match these up every time. It's not a mechanical thing, I wouldn't think. But what is it? I'm talking too much. Am I messing these up? Yeah. I got those ones backwards because I was talking. That's 4, that's 3. This is 5. Leave a comment if you noticed that I mixed those up before I noticed. I'll give you a gold star. If you've seen my favorite tools videos, then you've seen this thing. It's my high-speed ratchet, and it's the perfect tool for this job. I'm not getting them too tight. I'm going to go back and by hand, just kind of give them the final touch to make sure that they're tightened as much as I want them to be. Because I don't think there's a torque spec that I know of for these. I suppose one probably exists, but I'm unaware. It's not on my cheat sheet. Have I looked in the service manual? I don't think so. Honestly, I got these all about the perfect amount of tightness. Looks good. Almost all of them anyway. And we'll have to lift up on the metal thing, stick in the plastic thing, and push down on the metal thing. Times 6. Get in there. Sometimes you just gotta ask nicely or firmly. Pretty easy stuff. Just gonna give this a quick wipe down before I put it back in. It's really not hard to keep these clean. People always ask me how my engine bay looks so clean in my videos. It's like, well, I wipe off the dust. That's mainly like the main thing you do. Let's get this dust too. Wipe off the dust. If you've got some Armor All, Spray it on the plastic stuff, but not on the hoses. I've read that the Armor All can rot your hoses. Where is there? There we go. There we go. Always want to put the oil cap back on right away so you don't drop anything down there. Especially since we're dealing with small nuts and bolts. And this piece, I believe, yeah, it goes this way. Just like that. It hooks underneath on this side. Yeah, get out of there. And then has bolts goes through. We got bolts to hold down this one and nuts to hold down that one. Thank you, BMW. These are just little guys, so I don't like to use power tools on them. I'll just do them by hand pretty much. I mean, they're not going anywhere, even if they get completely loose and fall out. There's nowhere for them to go. As you'll see, we'll be putting plastic caps on top of these to make them virtually disappear. And then, yeah, there's nowhere for these nuts and bolts to go. Pretty good right there. Now, nuts on this side. Leave a comment if I should leave a video about how to clean the engine bay, because it is about time to do it. I can get in there and maybe remember some actual good tips instead of just saying wipe the dust off. But wiping the dust off is never a bad thing to do. You don't want it to accumulate. A big thing is, well, I'm gonna ruin my video if I start giving you tips, but here's one. Try not to drive in the rain right behind other cars, because you get a bunch of dirty water coming in through the front of your grill and splashing all over. And it doesn't matter if it's dirty or not, if your engine's covered in dust, you're gonna have a pretty good combination of ingredients to really get the engine dirty. Pine needles. Oh yeah, I pulled off the cabin air filter yesterday, and it was full of pine needles. I haven't been around a pine tree in over a year. Well, this car hasn't. Well, almost a year. I'm exaggerating. Okay, let's put this thing back in. Make sure it's lined up with those screw holes behind it, and get your rubber seals all lined up the right way. It seems like they have shrunk since the car was new, because they don't quite line up the way they should. It'll be fine. Now, mind you, I've got this thing on the lowest setting, so I'm not going to strip these out. Pretty sure. I feel rushed now because I'm filming in 4K, and that means it takes up like 4 times as much data on my computer and on my phone until I download it to my computer. So That's it's gonna get expensive because I do save all of my videos so that I can, which way does this go in? Is it this way or is it upside down? It only goes one way. I'm not sure. It was laying like this on my desk, but the pine needles were on the other side, so. Oh, but that would make sense because they don't fall on top of the filter. They fall down here and get sucked up into the filter, I believe. Yeah, that's right, because this goes on top. More things I should know about my car that I've owned for 17 years. That's dirty. Let's wipe that off. See, sometimes all you gotta do is just wipe it off. And then if you do go over it with Armor All, it's like going the extra mile. It's like people will think you go to car shows and put your car on display because it looks so nice. Maybe not, but it'll look nice to you. And these just kind of pop up in here. Let's not talk about the O2 sensors hanging there. If you have any guesses, leave a comment. But here's a hint for you. I mentioned something at the beginning of this video that has something to do with it. So, good luck to you. Just pop it on over the clips. Beautiful. Nobody needs to see that. I can't hide it. All right, I think we're done. One last dust wipe here. Oh, there is one thing I forgot. I even talked about it. I should have got these as soon as I mentioned it, so I didn't forget. We got some plastic caps to cover these holes. Hopefully I don't drop this down there. This is dumb of me. I do dumb stuff sometimes. I'm not claiming to not do dumb stuff. It definitely happens. And that's why I'm not a real mechanic. No, that's not why. I'm not a real mechanic because I never wanted to be. I mean, I kind of applied for a job at a mechanic shop when I was like 21, 22. I just wanted to do easy stuff, but they told me I didn't want to do it. And I was like, okay, you're probably right. So that's about as far as I got in a mechanic career. But that shop was the shop that I took this car to when I first bought it. That's how long ago that was. I was 20, was I 22 when I bought it? Yeah, I was. And it was a really good shop, but after a few years, they got new owners and they fired all the good mechanics and they increased their prices. So that was pretty disappointing, and I basically had to start learning how to work on this car myself. And that took me down the road to where I am today of pretty much doing as much on this car myself as I can, and also making videos for you guys to show you how to do stuff at home. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are just like I was and still kind of am, where it's like, there's no way that I could ever afford to take this car to the dealership every time something went wrong with it. That would add up tens of thousands of dollars, if not more. And so much of this stuff is so easy to do at home. It's like, I tell people all the time, this car, it feels like it was designed to be worked on. And it probably was. BMW knew how to engineer a car back in the day. I think this was one of the last good ones, but some people would probably argue with me and say that this car has too much electronics on it. Too many electronics. I don't know. It's been a great car for me for 17 years. I think about making a review video about it once in a while, but who cares about watching a review video about a 25-year-old car? That's what it's supposed to sound like. That is so much better. Man, am I happy with myself. Too bad my girlfriend doesn't care. So that's gonna do it for today, but if you've been here before, you probably noticed that this video is a little different than most of my videos have been since the beginning of the channel. I've been thinking of simplifying things and making more videos like this because it requires a lot less editing, but I wanna make videos that you guys like, so please leave a comment and let me know what you think. If you haven't been here before, but you did like the video, please subscribe, it helps me a lot. And as always, I put links in the description for everything that I use in my videos. So thanks for stopping by, and until next time, just keep throwing money at it. And by the way, if you're looking for some really entertaining BMW content, check out my friends from the land down under, Money Shifters. Their channel is still pretty small, but they're making some really great content, and I'm sure it's gonna blow up soon. So do yourself a favor and go check them out.